Thank you, Minister McNeill. He's given me 5 minutes and I'm going to try and stick to it. Mr. McNeill, I would like to look at this photo. It's a picture of Negril in 1952. Wow. As you can see, there was never a river on the South Negril River here. No, I know it was an overflow when it rained. No, I know dredging the river is pretty near to your heart. But we have to understand, if we dredge the river, which is proposed for this proposal, if we dredge the river, we lower the water table in the morass, which is going to cause those fires again. We're aware of the sewage system problem. It's not working properly. We're aware of the squatting on the riverbanks, the fishermen cleaning their boats, the water sports operators. I think we have to understand that the river cannot be dredged. It's going to be an environmental disaster. Furthermore, we've already dredged the river 3 times. It's millions of metric tons of the same sand that we're losing on the beach that we were going to be removing again. That's 1. 2, we're going to take some of the coastline and turn it into the area that Mr. Richard spoke about, where they're going to put the trucks. And I just want to show you the area so that you could understand. I just want to show you. This is the sand in the river here. A lot of people have seen this already. As you can see, this is the sand. And it will come back into the river. I just want to show you the area that is going to be taken over in this area here. Will become land. This is the pier here. This is the corner bar right here, right. This is going to become a solid structure, Minister. So these are the concerns. Lots of people have concerns about the breakwater itself. Mr. Richard gave a very good presentation. I'm sure I could get many marine coastal engineers to come in and refute what he says, but we don't have that. So I'm not really going to discuss the marine side of it, but I'm going to discuss what I feel, and a lot of people feel here, is that the environmental destruction that is necessary to take place to put these breakwaters in, it's too high for Negril. It's this breakwater, I noticed nobody mentioned this in the presentation. This breakwater is going to, I'm quoting from the environmental impact assessment, it is going to moderately protect 1.5 miles of Negril Beach. No, Long Bay Beach is 5 miles long. Why are we spending and destroying so much for 1.5 miles of beach? These are the questions we have. So, Ms. Bernard has done a lot of work. We appreciated what she did, but it all comes back down to the simple fact that at the end of the day, the local people understand their area better than anybody else. And nobody has really, they come down, just like today, we appreciate what they did, but we had a 2-hour presentation, and now everybody's going to be in a rush to leave, and nobody's going to hear the local people's voices. And this is the issue that's happened over and over again. Yes, Ms. Bernard is right, meetings were taking place. It was very confusing. We were talking about breakwaters for sandals, we were talking about the Adaptation Fund, we were talking about this fund and that fund, and people got confused. So, and also, nobody knew about dredging the river, taking some of the coastline. So these are all issues that we're very worried about. The other very important issue we're worried about is the lady from SEAC was very disingenuous. I can pick up on the internet hundreds of reports of why beach nourishment is the way to go now. Everybody is basically stopped doing breakwaters. I have here a few figures that I thought you might find interesting. The federal government of the US spent 2 years ago for the whole United States For every $1 the federal government spent on beach nourishment, they had a tax return of $320. Florida, for all the funds that they spent on beach nourishment, both private and government, they had a return of $7,000 on every dollar they spent for beach nourishment. Now, my question is, beach nourishment takes 1 month to do the whole 5 miles of Long Bay. I'm a very conservative person, and I estimate that Negril will see an immediate increase of 20% of visitor arrival to Negril. 5% of that will just be people coming to see what we did, because the advertising and the marketing of the beach nourishment for Negril will create such interest in the international scene that I can see an immediate response. Furthermore, every hotel property and every inch of the beach would benefit immediately. Now, we all know that the southern section of the beach is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Now, this breakwater, I haven't heard them say if there's going to be any sand coming on the southern section of the beach. So we're spending all this money, we're destroying our environment, and the place that is most susceptible to losing beach is the southern section, and they get nothing. And I don't think Negril is a viable tourism destination with 1.5 miles of beach. And that, I think, if I've left anything out, I hope I haven't left anything out. I've got a little synopsis of what I just said to you, and I'm sure there's lots of other questions everybody else has had, but I thank you for giving me the 5 minutes, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As I said, I think there are some issues there that I think need to be addressed. There's some broader issues of between breakwaters and nourishment, but the discussions about the area that is to be dredged down by Lindsay Corner was one, and I'm just picking up some technical things that I think that were stated that I just want to get the two sides. What is the thought on that? Because it's going to change the character of things, and I don't know, and I want to know what the impact of that would be. The second thing is that there was a statement made about where the worst part is, and I would mind if, because there's a difference in opinion in that. I think we need to clarify, because some of these things we need to just clarify once and for all, and if we have a difference, it's something that we can look at again. I think those were the two. There was one more. The dredging. The dredging. The dredging of the river and the impact of that, because we do have issues with the morass, and these are operational. In other words, these are things they're doing to do the actual breakwater. So it's implementation, but I'd like to know what the alternatives are and if we have looked at that. I will say something though. There is an issue that we're going to have to address, because there's a cry in the Negril from the fishermen about the harbour, and there's been an issue with that and the dredging of that, or at least clearing of it. So, sure.
I appreciate this is dear to your heart, Minister, and I agree that the fishermen do need somewhere to put their boats and clean them and dry dock. I think we need to find somewhere else. Maybe the North Negril River needs to be opened up and something done there. But we have to understand that without the beach and without the hotels and tourism, the water sports operators wouldn't have any clients. So at the end of the day, I think we have to look at the environmental impacts before we look at the business impacts. There's many other things I'd like to say to you, because I believe that we need to restrict the planning on the new buildings that are coming on. We need a sewage system. This is creating some of the problem in the sea right now, because the sewage system is not working. I understand there's an estimated 1,000 hotel rooms coming on in the next 18 months to 2 years. Is the sewage system big enough to deal with it? I don't think so. So these are all issues that are all interconnected. And I really feel that the damage that we're creating for these breakwaters for such a small amount of protection is not worth it. I would prefer if the PIOJ go back to the Adaptation Fund and say, can we use this for the sewage system? I mean, I understand you don't want to do beach erosion, but this is a question I'd like to ask.
All right, so I think though that those 2 points, certainly the area that's being dredged and the dredging of the South River and the area that's being dumped, I've heard that that is a concern that has been. I don't know if you want to just address that.
Okay, the reason given for the adverse impact of the dredging is we lower the water table in the morass. It really doesn't sound very logical, but we'd have to get the WRA's response, because they're the expert on underground water. But we are intent on getting a draft of about 2 meters for the barge to be able to be loaded in that area. And so I'm trying to figure out if the Negril people don't understand that it's not actual. The dredging, when you say dredging, it sounds like you're taking everything out, but we're just clearing a draft to ensure that the fishers can come in and also that the barge can come in. And so whatever material is removed there will be placed outside for 30 meters along the coast, wrapping around the corner. It's not a mile. It's probably 30 meters, because we want a yard of about 3,000 square meters to store material right there. Once the project has finished, all of that can be taken back out and the area restored. Now, all we have to do is put it in the contract for the contractor to do his removal of the site. Simple. And it returns to the original use. Simple. And that was always been a part of the plan.
Does the project still remain?
No, please, can we just, if you raise your hand, I'll ask, but I think for us to have an orderly meeting today, rather than it become, let's just take our time and try and get the correct answers. Let me just ask you, what right now is hardly any draft in there? It's almost completely blocked off. And you're saying that the idea is to bring it to 2 meters. That's what you say. And the water resources, we have not gotten, have we gotten something from them? No, I think it would be necessary for us to get something from water resources. I think that would be an important part.
But they have been included and there's no, we haven't heard.
No, I'm just saying, I would like to see a response from that. Mary?
In the EIA that was done by CL Environmental, it clearly states that before the river is dredged, a hydrological study needs to be done on that, and there's no talk of that being done. Nothing has been done about that. And there must be a reason why Mr. Campbell had that in the EIA.
Yeah, I think that we agree, and I think that the experts are the Water Resource Authority, and it is something I would like to see that myself. Sorry, not? Oh, all right. Nero.
I hate it.
Question for you, sir.
For the end of it.
Yes, for the end of the with regards to the dredging of the river, Is there any area of the downtown section of Negril, the ocean there, that will be filled in to accommodate the loading or the unloading of the trucks?
Yeah, along the pier, along the groin, on the south side, on the south groin, that area will be filled in to get cargo for material storage and barge loading.
What area, what's the size of the area that you plan to fill in?
I think.
And can you tell us starting from where and ending where?
All right.
Starting from the groin and then you'll be moving.
There's a picture.
You think they can just pull up the pictures
And the question is this.
I don't have a picture in my presentation. It's actually here.
And another question, if this is whatever you propose, if it goes through, at the end of the project, what happens to that dump area?
Well, you remove the piles and you remove the sand.
And you have made provisions for this in your
It will be the budget.
project?
Will be.
This is the reason for the public consultation. Now, there are options for it. If the land agency wants the land there, we could consider leaving it. If NEPA wants to put up a monitoring site there, or if the people don't want it to stay there, then we have to move it out.
Okay. As has been said here, the river has been dredged on 3 occasions and on over extended period of time. And on each occasion, it has all filled back in with sand, and the sand most likely has come from our beach. So the dredging of the beach has contributed to beach erosion in the grid. There is a picture here. Yeah, the dredging of the river. Right, dredging of the river has contributed to beach erosion in Negril. There is a picture of Negril in the 1950s prior to any development taking place here, where there was really no South Negril River as such. It was merely an overflow point for the Great Morass, and only in the rainy season there would be an outflow of water onto the ocean. A grave error was made in the 50s, and I only hope you're not coming here to compound our error again.
Ms. Bradley?
We're talking about the beach, but nobody's talking about the morass. Now, whatever you do on the beach, if you do beach nourishment, breakwater, there's a lot of mess that comes down from the morass, and the sewage is included. And I think we need to talk seriously about addressing the problem in the morass, because we have to either do them simultaneously or putting something in place to address the morass, because that is a hazard in itself, and that impacts the beach.
Yeah, I still need a little bit of clarification, and I have a recommendation as it relates to the area that you're going to be dumping, or proposed to dump, to accommodate the office, canteen, and toilets on the crane.
The field, not dump. Dump is
I use the term dump because I'm more comfortable using that term. And we agree, so I'll proceed. I'm very concerned, like others, about that dump in that area, and I'm wondering if consideration was given for an alternative location. We have 2 rivers that leads to the sea, and I don't know if we have considered using the other location. I know that the other location is more acceptable for trucks to enter, and as I already have a big enough area, I would take you there. I'll be happy to take you there and show you. It's an area that has an approach on both sides, any side that you enter the river. I would recommend that you check it, because the area that you're proposing here and the amount of facilities you're going to be putting in there, I'm speculating that it's going to be a significant area. So I'm recommending to you that we look at the alternative.
All right, I understand. There's Mr. Campbell, am I correct? Maybe Mr. Campbell, if you will introduce yourself. I'm just going to let him say a few words.
I'm Carlton Campbell from Sale Environmental. We did the environmental impact assessment on this proposed project. Just to address Mr. Reynolds, just to address your concerns. As we had outlined, there are three main options that we had looked at. Or they had looked at, and we looked at it and agreed. South Negril River, which was where we're thinking of filling, and the North Negril River, I assume is the other river you're thinking about. All right. The problem with the North Negril River is that we're talking about environmental damage. If you go to that area, to get that site, you're going to clear a lot of vegetation. That's the first thing. The second thing, to get the barge up there, you're going to have to blast rocks to make the space and to get the draft. So you're going, in truth and in fact, do a lot more damage to the environment than going to the South Negril River. The other option was transporting it from Sablamar. Now, in terms of the limited budget that they have, that wasn't really going to cut it. So it was left to that option. On the west end, if you look, most of that areas are cliff, so you wouldn't be able to load in the barge efficiently. So that left the problem. My understanding in discussion also, we looked if it was possible to find an option along the Long Bay Beach. That's what I'm saying. So my understanding, the response was that most of the hoteliers, and I agree, wouldn't want trucks and loading to occur along that area because of the tourism problem. So it left us really with that option.
Okay. I have two more questions.
I have 2 points concerning the place where the construction site will be, which I love in the presentation of Mr. Richards, I think that was your name, to say there will be nothing happening on the, or there will be no parking on the main road to unload the trucks. So I'm watching with interest how you do that down beside the Chinaman and behind Burger King, not to park your trucks there to unload the blocks. So I don't know how that is supposed to work, even with your little, may I cite Mr. Reynolds to say dump in that area. So how do you exactly, I would like to know how that is supposed to work. What will happen for 9 months at least, because 9 months said means really 12 at least, means that we will have no access to the West End. That means all our movement of the tourists coming down to the beach during the day and the other ones going up to the West End for sunset will be deeply disrupted. Not to talk about all the dust development while you're unloading the stones in the middle of our little Negril, which is really a village. That means your construction site is bigger than our city center, right? That's my first point. My second point is that I find it very interesting how you say that the northern part is far more affected by water movement than the southern part. I mean, all of us will see that the biggest beach loss is the southern part. Secondly, I would as well like to know how comes that for some reason all the boats of Negril are in the north, because that is the most quiet part of the ocean. Waves coming into Negril, if they're coming from the south or the northwest, normally hit the south beach, not the north. That's why everybody has the big boats up there. So I'm just a dive instructor, so I would like to understand how you justify in the north to build a breakwater where whole Negril has to pay at least 12 months damaging destruction.
I've heard this discussion. What I would like though, could you show me, you had a slide and you showed the part of the beach that was to be, that the first breakwater would affect. And let me just clarify in my mind. where you had something that showed the beach erosion. Am I correct?
Yes.
There was something, I wouldn't mind seeing it, just to see where the beach erosion was along the beach. It's interesting just to know.
I have a question.
All right, give me 1 second, let me just clarify. Because as I'm saying, what I'm trying to do is just to go through some of the issues. Is there someone, maybe one of you can explain these things?
The hotspots have been identified in this is one result that the indoor directions. Ted Robbins, my
All right. Okay. What I will ask, as I said, these are real concerns, and I just want, at the end, I've asked the ministry to just give the points of concerns, and I'm going to have them properly researched so that we can get back those, get those results.
My question is this. I don't know how many people remember Hurricane Ivan. I certainly do. And Mr. Richards indicated that the highest wave would be 6 meters, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I can assure you that the waves that I saw pass were a lot higher than 6 meters. And that I can take you to a place down the West End where there are a number of huge, huge rocks, boulders weighing tons, I would say 15, 20 tons, that are scattered all over, that were brought in by Hurricane Ivan. And I'll be very happy to take you there and show you. So I doubt very much if we had a Hurricane Ivan, if the breakwater would hold.
Dr. Garth Fraser, West End resident. I just wanted to say that, I mean, we're trying to theorize with all of these diagrams and so on as to which part of the beach is the most eroded. It's easy. Walk down the beach and look. There is no sign on the southern end of the beach. We don't need all the theories. And it's a question of whether we want a project that costs a lot of money, that will help a certain part of the beach that the theorists say is the northern part, when most of the trouble is in the southern part and going on. It is the entire beach, that's recognized. We need something that affects the whole beach, not some little corner of the beach. And although beach nourishment is not a permanent solution, we are aware of that. The returns that will come from keeping the tourists coming here to Negril will pay enough to do that as necessary in the future. We don't have to disturb the town for a year with trucks, and all this about not parking on the road. How many trucks do you know in Jamaica that don't break down at least twice a week? That's the first thing, and there's lots of others. That's just my point of view.
You know, I want to ask a question because I'm not certain, because I'm hearing the discussion about North and South, and I'm a little confused myself, because to me the area that has been mostly affected, to me the worst, appears to be that little section right in the middle beside Footprints, Treehouse, that little section. Now, that section to me is right in the middle. Hold on, just wait a second. So the reason I asked that, which I think is the same thing here. No, so I'm just asking, hold on. So wait a second. So I'm just trying to clarify in my mind if there's a general, I mean, am I wrong about what I just said? No. That would be that is a section. So you're terming that south? No, just
and then Rondell Village going down
all the way south.
all the way down is suffering.
You also have, just as you reach the corner between Hanover and West.
And they're talking about
Yeah, right on the corner. No, hold on. So let me just ask a question. So
this is data that was collected over a number of sections over 40 years. These are the lines showing beach erosion lengths in the Negril area. This and these are the areas where most erosion occurs. Here and here. Breakwaters will come here and here to ensure that this erosion is slowed down and we get accretion in some of these areas.
give me an example. Where for example, the section that we just spoke about.
Yeah.
The section we just spoke about with footprints and that intersection with where is that?
We'll be probably in the middle here.
This is the map from the EIA.
This is the
Right, but I would have said.
Alright,
so and which area is it that these breakwaters are supposed to be?
These areas, this correspond to the areas of highest erosion. So here and here. These are the areas we're expecting. You have any idea what properties are here? Footprints?
Again, let me just tell you, I need, for something of this magnitude, we need to ensure that we have the proper information that's been conveyed. Certainly I have to have it. So one of the things that I want is, I think this needs to be a little bigger, right? And if you're able to put some identifying properties on it, so that I have an idea, rather than just making a statement, north and south, and it's a little misleading. If we can do that, then I think it would help me. And I also want to have an idea in a separate slide of the area that you're seeing as the most vulnerable and the area you're going to protect, and demarcate it by means of some properties so that I have an idea of what is going on.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Taunton. I'm from the UDC. I am responsible for the environmental management department, planning department. My expertise is actually in oceanography. The area that you're talking about, where that little indentation is actually the UDC property. Right, that part is severely eroded, that the water actually comes onto the road from that area. My concern is, I'm taking this from the perspective of being as a part of the stakeholders in the fact that we own land in the area. Now, some of the concerns that I have, first of all, let me just say that yes, I'm in support of the breakwater being constructed. It just depends on the orientation and how it is laid out. I have some concerns, especially in comparison. I know that you're not gonna like what I'm gonna say, but especially in comparison to beach nourishment, because there are numerous studies right across the world that show that beach nourishment is a short-term, and I know it has been emphasized, it is a short-term fix. What we must also understand is that your risk increases significantly if you're thinking about just doing beach nourishment and not putting any hard engineering. Your beach nourishment can disappear overnight. I mean, we keep on talking about how over time, and yes, we acknowledge that it would have to be done over a period of time, but you also must understand that this can happen overnight. There's one storm event that can come and all of that work would be knocked. Okay? And there's various studies that have showed this, and in fact, what has happened in Europe is that they have totally abandoned looking at beach nourishment in isolation. because there are many areas where they have shown that when you do the beach nourishment and it just disappears. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying that you do not do the beach nourishment. It cannot be done in isolation. Okay? Alright. The concerns that I have not been able to go through the entire document because, as the minister has said, it's quite robust, and I just got introduced to it this week. So I've not been able to look at it. And there were some concerns that I had in regards to what is being done and what I haven't seen emphasized. For instance, the whole dismissal of the replanting of the seagrasses or the maintenance of the seagrass, right, should not be looked at so lightly. Because what some studies that have been even presented here as evidence have shown is that when you look at a storm event and what happens is that you do have your impact on your coastal area, but having these structures, having your reefs, having your natural structures also helps to assist you in terms of your inward impact, meaning the land-based impact. And what it has shown is that seagrass beds significantly decreases the impact that it has inland. So you're talking about your infrastructure and the assets that you have land-based must also be taken into consideration, and I see very little emphasis on that. And that is something that is very important to look at. The other thing is that I don't see a lot of emphasis being placed on the maintenance of the structure. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if you take our own experience into consideration, about 40 years ago, there were breakwaters that were constructed or groins that were constructed in the Montego Bay area. Most of you know that area, that 3 Bay area, which is where Aquasol and so forth are. Now, those structures were placed there in order to protect the fill that was being put in, because that land wasn't there before, okay? Now, what has happened over the years is that it has not been maintained, and actually what is the situation now is that erosion has actually accelerated, right? Because when you have your breakwater and it's not maintained, because for it to be effective, it must be able to dissipate the wave energy, right? Now, if storm events come and it moves the structure, and I will say that none of the structures that are in Montego Bay are much closer to land than the one that has been proposed here. And despite all the hurricane and storm events that have occurred, yes, you have had displacement of the structures, but none of them have been on the shoreline itself. All right? What you have to have is displacement right along the area, and it has allowed for some sea life to use the area. However, because the breakwaters have decreased inside, they have decreased their efficiency or what they're actually trying to do. So what you have is that the waves come and they break against the breakwater, but it's not being much of a help, okay? And in fact, what happens is that when you have certain structures in places, you will end up having areas which are nourished and you have areas which are starved. And that's what's happening in Negril presently. Because even within the last year, as you see the natural cycle that goes on, there are times when I have come here and you have a nice width of beach, and another time it is decreased. However, this does not happen everywhere. All right, because for instance, where the property that you're talking about, we haven't seen any accretion there in a long while. And I'm talking about the natural accretion. All right, the rest, we have 2 properties along that area, and what we find is that at Long Bay 1, there's time when the width varies and it's not that significant, and the turnover time is not that great. However, at Long Bay 2, you don't have any accretion, and that's what we're talking about in terms of the water coming onto the land. All right. And now the reason for this could be because of the construction of other structures in the water. And I haven't seen any consideration being placed in terms of removal of these structures, because they're actually starving other places along the beach. Because when I came first for consultation, a lot of persons emphasized the impact of this piecemeal approach to protection of the Negril area. Right? And it was decided that you needed to have a more holistic plan, which is what is being presented here. So there needs to be some consideration being given to removal of this actual structures that have been placed on, because I'm not certain, based on what I'm seeing presented, if those structures have been put into context with putting in that structure, if it's going to help the situation or it's going to make it worse.
Thank you.
I'm Ken Cooney, resident from the West End. Just one suggestion that in relation to this data that we see in front of us and the mismatch with what residents of Negril are finding. If I heard correctly, that's 40 years of data. And I'm just wondering whether actually something within that 40 years has changed. With climate change and so on, maybe it would be better to look at a shorter period of time and see whether the data would then support what the residents here have witnessed themselves.
Lambert.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Lambert Williams from the Negril Coral Reef Preservation Society. And I must say, we all love Negril to death. Everyone in this room, even if they don't have property on the beach, they consider the Negril Beach a national treasure. And I must say that people like Claire Bernard from the PIOJ and Leon Roper and some other people from NEPA, they also love Negril to death. And I tell you, people like Miss Bernard, I have spoken to her hours and hours on the phone. And I tell you, her passion lies with the restoration of the Negril Beach, and her intent is good. Now, the climate change phenomenon is a powerful phenomenon. According to the United Nations scientists, coral reef provide livelihood and shoreline protection for more than 500 million people worldwide. And so, they are mandated, their scientists, to go around the world and collect coral samples to be placed in liquid nitrogen. If and when the climate became stabilized, they will reintroduce them into the water. So, whatever method we use, barrier reef, re-nourishment, it's going to be an uphill task. It's going to be a serious challenge. I mean, we probably need to just go to the Netherlands and see how they do it, since 60% of their countries are under sea level. And they are still the second largest exporter of winter vegetable, meaning they are very good at it. And Mr. Issa brought a gentleman into Negril a couple of weeks ago, and I was impressed by what he did. Now, I am equally impressed by what the engineers and the PIOJ and NEPA has to offer. And so, we have to come up with a middle ground. I mean, there are some desperate hoteliers. I mean, if you're an hotelier, when you wake up, you see the beach under your doorstep, then you are very desperate. And so, if we must have the barrier reef, if we cannot get a scope of work, which is going to be difficult according to Ms. Bernard, if we must have it, I would want to see these engineers come in with a simulated method, just like how they bring it into the lab, put it on computer and show how the trucks are going to perform, how the Negril traffics are not going to be interrupted. We must have this. We must have this, ladies and gentlemen. Outside of that, the only method, and common sense will tell you, is an integrated, sustainable approach where we deal with the wetland, where we stop eating the parrotfish, where we look at how seagrass must not be removed from it, because these are the only natural way the beach are going to build back sand. There's no other way, because sand dissolve and disappear. So where are you going to get sand again to re-nourish? The approach has to be very integrated, and the Negril Coral Reef Preservation Society is going to be working on an integrated approach while we look at the barrier reef. And let me tell you this with the barrier reef. I have spoken to Mr. Smith-Warner more than 1,000 hours on phone. And never once Mr. Smith-Warner ever said that you must re-nourish, then you put in the barrier reef. He said, you have to put in a breakwater and then you re-nourish. I said, why, Mr. Smith? He said, it's like a man having an air-conditioned car and the gas leak out. And the man just come re-gas it and gone. And fix the leak. He said you must have a breakwater. I'm not saying that we must have this elaborate breakwater. But we have to have something to break down the wave while we look at re-nourishment. God bless him.
Let me just, I'm coming. I have Dr. Carby, Mary again. Anybody else? That will be it.
Yes, afternoon everybody. I just wanted to follow up on this point about the seagrass. It's very, very important because The studies by the Marine Geology Unit at Mona showed that not only are the seagrass beds important in stabilizing any sand that is there, but the majority of this sand actually is generated from the seagrass beds. There are in fact two different types of seagrass. One is more important for stabilizing, and the other is more important for hosting the little organisms whose shells actually make up the sand for the beach. So in all of the discussion, I tend to agree, we have not talked about the seagrass and how important that is. Now, it was mentioned in the engineering report. The fact is that in the right conditions of low energy and so on, seagrass will regenerate. You can replant it, and I believe there are some plans to replant some areas. Never could speak to that. But it is still an expensive method. So you will recall, those of you who were at the consultation, that we had actually discussed at the time what community-based inputs could help in terms of replanting some of that seagrass. The other thing is that somebody mentioned the possibility of the effects of climate change. That too is very instructive, because we have to think about two effects. One is the overall, one of the things that has come out of more recent measurements of sea level rise is that the actual sea level rise is greater than that which had been predicted by the models. So that's one point to think about. Your sea level will be rising, so your encroachment on land will be greater because of course, the topography of the coastline. The second thing we have to think about in terms of climate change is the projection that we will have more intense storms. Not necessarily more storms, but more intense storms over time. So those are parameters or variables which I think must be factored into the discussion.
Thank you. There are a couple of things that I would like to address about this. In terms of beach nourishment, it's really sad that some of the entities that are here today didn't come to the Van Ord presentation or make an effort to send a representative, because I think you would have all learned a lot about beach nourishment and the benefits of it. The coastal engineer that came from Van Ord has 30 years experience. He lives in the Caribbean, he's from Curacao, and it was his opinion that breakwaters should not be used in any beach that lies in a hurricane zone due to the maintenance costs. That was his personal opinion, and I'm just sharing it. David Smith from Smith Warner was also there, and while you will all say that his report says that breakwaters were the first choice, I asked him, I copied the pages off, I emailed him, he was off the island, and he said, you have misinterpreted his report. The first option we should look at is beach nourishment, and he said within 5 years the possibility of structures, because we are a small island developing state and we do not always have the money to maintain the beach nourishment. The beach nourishment. The beach nourishment needs to be maintained, and because we might not have the funding to maintain it as they do in Florida and other areas where, by the way, the return on the dollar is $700 for every dollar they spend in Florida between hotels, restaurants, tourist arrivals, etc. The other thing that I would like to point out with this whole thing is that there is no peer review testing done of this breakwater design. And this is why there are all these questions coming up. NEPA had out a tender last year in September, it closed off in October, for a consultant engineering firm to look at this design in detail, review it,
and monitor the entire project from start to finish. That has not been done. I asked about it and no one can tell me anything about it. And I think it would do a whole lot if that could be done to allay the fears of people that we're doing something that, as Dr. Richards said, we've never done anything of this size here in Jamaica. Yes, your words come back and haunt you. But it's a fact. We don't know, and there is no peer review testing, and NEPA has not done it. And if they closed off that tender from October of last year, and we're now in July, why has it not been looked at and reviewed? And in fact, we have sent the test, and I have requested, no, I have, yeah, I'm just, what it means is that there's another engineering firm who's going to go and look at the design and make sure that, yes, it can work or not, to give an opinion. You know, when you go to a doctor and the doctor says, I have to cut off your foot? Right, exactly. Right, and yeah, okay, and we don't have that. We don't have a peer review of this design. All we have is NWA telling us that this is what it is, and SIAC telling us that this is what it is, and, you know, it has not allayed fears that everybody has about this design. And I think that that really is something very, very important. And in fact, I have requested from NEPA the design concept from SIAC and other documents, because we've sent what we have so far to a firm overseas to review it.
Just one quick thing to pick up on what Mary just said. I saw up there where they put the disruption with doing the beach nourishment. Now, from the Van Ord presentation, there was no disruption. 1 month, and the tubes will be floating, not pegged down, and so it will be least disruption. So that up there was misleading, wherever they say they got that from. So that's why we're saying somebody should have been at the Van Ord presentation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Talith Drummond. I am a resident of the West End community. Now, I have been listening to the for and against for Breakwater, and I've also heard a lot of explanation about why it is so expensive to do beach nourishment. But to follow on from what Elaine said, Ms. Bradley, we heard about it from the Bonon, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, report about the fact that it would only take a month, and it would take 1.4 million, I think, to do, is it 5 or 6 miles? No, for 1 mile. For five, yeah. So we would be able to do more or less the whole of the beach, right? For the beach nourishment, with the money that is allocated right at this present time. The other thing is, I heard you mention, Miss, I'm not sure of your name, I'm sorry, old head is going, but what was said was about finding sand. In that report, there was also stated that there's a bank of sand out there in the sea that is compatible to the sand here in Negril. So I am not sure why you had not mentioned that, because we don't have to go and purchase it, and we do not have to go and make it. And no, I know you didn't say that, but you were talking about the cost. Now, the other thing is, I have not heard is anything about how much the breakwater would be to maintained. I know somebody else said that, but the beach nourishment was in depth about how much it was going to cost. So we would like to get some report about how much it would cost for the breakwater to be maintained, how often it would need to be maintained, because right now I feel like most of us here in Negril that the breakwater is going to be a danger to some of the hotels here. You talked about, what, 6 meters of wave? Coming from the West End, you will see 30 feet waves, and it's coming onto the beach. And with that sort of waves coming in. Can you imagine what I can do with those boulders? Again, I will support what Miss Enova had said. I too have seen great big boulders sitting on toilets in hotels' rooms. So when you want to see these things, please come to us. We are Negrilites, Westballites. If you want to hear information, I don't know how many persons you spoke to before, but I've heard about 5 or 6 persons being on your committee. Right? I don't think that is representative of Negril. And these persons, we don't have a report from them when they go to your meetings. So we would like to know who these persons are, because we are unsure right at this moment. Thank you.
Ladies before gentlemen, you want to respond? No? Well, thank you, Minister, and thank you for yielding. To any difficult situation, extreme, never, ever is where solutions are found. We have to be mindful of balance. And I want to just add for all of us in here, we need to remember that there have been so many presentations over so many years. And I will tell you that most of the persons that are here today have never actually come to most of the presentations. There are key people inside this room who represent businesses or residents from various areas who have been, but many people have not. So sometimes we have to be careful, and this is some of what I'm saying is a comment more than anything else. We have to be very careful that we don't sound as if we're starting from ground zero. Because sometimes some of our comments are as if they're starting from ground zero. I want to just make sure that we all remember that particularly PIOJ, Jamaica is a very large place. They did not have to bother to focus on Negril. All right? They did not have to focus on Negril, and I think we all should commend them for at least putting Negril on the plate. All right? And I think, in case it's kind of gotten lost that we're not appreciative, I think we need to be appreciative. The other thing, Van Ort's presentation, Mary, in case it's not being said, Mr. and Mrs. Lissa, the reality is not everybody has been invited to many of the meetings that have taken place over the last several weeks and months. Not all people, that is a fact. And there are many people that have not been. So today, let today be a starting point of everybody deciding to get together to find a solution, because we all have passion for it. We all want Negril to be better. We all want. There are lots of residents in the room. Not sure there are many businesses in the room, but there are lots of residents. But residents and businesses both want what is best for Negril. And that is going to come from balance and listening to everything. Integrated solutions. I don't think any of the presenters have indicated that Negril doesn't have a delicate environmental balance. We know that. And it must be protected. And the approach must take that into consideration. So whatever the solution, whether the solution starts with something and goes to phase 2 and phase 3 of including the various issues, that must happen. But we have to start somewhere and determine where. I share the viewpoint that we have to be very careful where this fill, dump, whatever we want to call it is, big concern. I would also caution that, when we talk about sand nourishment, the truth of the matter is whatever we're going to do to fix the problem of the beach erosion in Negril, it is going to disrupt us. Let us not fool ourselves to think that whether it is breakwaters, or if we want to be more politically correct, artificial reef extensions, all right, or sand nourishment, either one is going to disrupt us. Because when you're going to nourish the sand, many of the people in here are residents, but guess what? The pipes are going to go in front of a hotel. I don't want to have to referee which hotel those pipes are going to be disrupted for 1 month. It is going, no, it's one, no, but it is going to be in front of hotel. Hotel A is going to say, no man, don't put it in front of my hotel, put it in front of hotel B. We are going to have issues on that. Both things are going to be disruptive. Let us not consider they're not going to be disruptive. Both will be disruptive. We can gauge disruption levels, but both are going to be disruptive. And my very last point that I just want to say, do not for a moment think that tourist arrivals to Florida and the factors that affect Florida are the same as what it takes to get business to Jamaica. They cannot be equated, and I personally do not actually throw much into that equating it. Yes, the beach is a problem. Yes, improving the beach will help us all, but I don't think the two sets of figures can be easily equated. Thank you, Minister.
I just wanted to try and address Ms. Bradley. I heard you're talking about the beach nourishment. I don't know how many persons in this room have ever seen it done. Okay. Well, they talk about the floating pipeline. Oh, yes, fine, thank you. They talk about, okay, about the floating pipeline. How do you think the floating pipeline stays in place? No, how do you think it keeps it in place? You don't just leave it on the water surface and it stays there. It has to be anchored.
Have you seen it?
I beg your pardon? I've seen it. Falmouth, I've seen it other places. And this is not the first. So I'm saying to you, they'll give you the song and dance, that it will be float. It is a song and dance. It is a song and dance.
Let me just, I'm going to add something. No. There will be contending points of view. But I believe that we must respect everybody's point of view and the fact that everybody wants what's best for you. So I'm just going to ask, whoever is speaking at a time, to speak, and if there's another side, by all means, exactly, please.
I choose my words carefully. Sorry. But the fact of the matter is you have to understand, a dredging company will always tell you the nice things. The fact of the matter is we know in practical what happens when it comes to a floating pipe, right? The fact of the matter is Negril's area, the draft in there is not deep. I mean, it's not something that we have to discuss. So we know it will have to stay offshore to pump it, right? I don't have to be in the meeting, unfortunately I was invited, but I know, I have an idea what happens. Now, if you know when pumping sand, those pipes at times also leak. We talk about protecting the environment. So there are always going to be negatives for both. So I don't like when people pretend as if when we're sanding, it's going to be all well and good. And one of the things, as I was saying, the floating pipes, even though the technical is floating, it has to be anchored to keep that when the waves and stuff come in. So the anchors have to go somewhere. And I've seen it firsthand what it can do in Falmouth in terms of the floating pipe. They did dredging and they had to pump offshore. It's the same thing, but in Falmouth, they were just getting the silt out to do a channel, to do the silt.
That's really disruptive.
No, I'm talking about the pipes, not the front. So I just want people to be clear. The other thing that I've heard bandied about is the 1 month. Now, I don't know how he arrived at the volumes of sand that is needed to get the beach to where I've heard persons asking in terms of the distances of. But in terms of the bathymetric survey, I think we have, or the engineers have the most detailed bathymetric survey along that alignment. So you get a better feel for how much sand is needed to sand it to your 30 meters or your 20 meters, whatever it is area. And based on what we know the rates are, I mean, I'm sure you can negotiate, but the rates generally from pumping offshore is anywhere between 25 to about 40 US per cubic meter. Now, the estimate that we have in terms of volume is somewhere between 700 to 800,000 cubic meters. It works out to about 15 or 70 million US. Now, No, but I'm just telling you, the calculation that has been done based on... Yeah. I mean, it's not, I'm not saying he didn't give you a figure, but I'm saying to you that we have a more current bathymetric survey. There are ways of doing estimates, and I'm sure that is what he did. But in terms of what is the reality, and in terms of the slope of the beach, we know, have a good feel of what is required. And if you do the math, at 700 to 800,000 cubic meters, there's no way it's going to work out to $5 or $6 million. Impossible. And if using his calculation, and he has 1 month, then he's probably thinking about 100,000, 200,000 cubic meters. And if you estimate at 1 month, and we are thinking 700 to 800, you realize why I said 1 month cannot be it.
Yes, just to come back to the issue of the sand nourishment. A couple years ago, we were at the Planning Institute of Jamaica, were asked to assist in the development of a proposal for Negril. And it is the one, I think, Minister, that you made reference to, where a team went to meet with Prime Minister Golding at the time. And one of the things we were asked to do was to find someone who could provide us with $450,000 just to do the sand survey. Because although there has been talk that there is a sand bank off the coast of Negril, the size of that bank and all of those details are yet to be determined. And so we were asked, when the proposal for the proposed level of nourishment and all of that was done, we were looking at something in the order of $25 million. And that, Minister, was part of the reasons why it was not accepted. On top of that, the proposal that we got for the integrated solution was $55 million. And we have been saying, we have had that in the Planning Institute, trying to get resources for Negril all of these years. There's nobody who is going to give you $50 million. Absolutely no agency. And that is something that you would have to borrow for. Does the government have the capacity to borrow all of that money? No, it does not. And so what can be done? I heard Mary make mention of this peer review. I am not aware that you necessarily get an engineer to look at what another engineer has proposed and is doing. It's not a piece of scientific research or study that paper that you're writing, and so you're doing a peer review. In any event, that's part of the role of the National Works Agency, and you can't have several layers of monitoring the one piece of work. What you'd find happening is that everybody would be eating out the money and the work on the ground is not being done. So we have to be careful about those things. Now, in terms of, Mary made mention of NEPA having advertised for an engineer and not having appointed one. I will say that the Planning Institute of Jamaica has asked NEPA not to issue any more contracts on this project based on the feedback of the community. We cannot continue to throw money on a situation where the residents have said they do not want the work, and where the residents are raising an international protest. Because what is going to happen is that you have all these people with all these contracts, no work being done, and the government of Jamaica, through the Planning Institute of Jamaica, is liable. And I'm sure you don't want that to be done.
All right, I'm sort of, I know, Mary, yes, I know. Just hold on. One, I'm going to go with the 3, and then I think that we're close to, hold on. Did you want to say something?
I'm going to hear Mr. Hissa talk for a moment. Mr. Hissa has some good points, you know. Yes?
Hi, I'm Jane Hissa. I just want to say beach nourishment is a clean approach as opposed to what Breakwaters will do to Negril. It only takes care of 1.5 miles of the beach. And it's a lot of construction for a year. It's going to disrupt business. It may take people down the West End years to recover, like it did when they put in the sewage pipe. And with beach nourishment, you do see a return on the investment. It is clean. And that money that you see on the return will help maintain it. And everybody will get sand. The entire beach will benefit.
I take note of what Dr. Carberry said about the rising level. It's going to rise a lot faster than we predicted. So I'd like to ask Mr. Richards. Is it Richards? Sorry, yes. Mr. Richard, okay, the sea level is going to rise faster. That means all of us on the beach are going to have less and less beach, correct? So where in this global warming, rising sea level, where is this breakwater going to help Negril as a whole? I just would like to understand that.
That was included in the design of consider climate change factors.
But is it going to? Is it going to protect the whole 5 miles?
I'm saying that we consider climate change factors in design to ensure that the breakwaters would be able to address the rising sea level that we are estimating, predicting that would occur over the period. Right. Yes, we believe it will have the whole 5 miles. Eventually, it's going to affect the northern and central sections directly. And then because of the alongshore movement of sand in the area naturally, sand naturally moves down. So the sand will move down to the southern area. So there will be some improvement in the southern area. But directly, it's going to affect the northern and central areas. No, nothing can prevent the sea from rising. But I said we included the climate change considerations in our design. We included sea level rise estimations. No, but the break.
Mr. McNeill, I want to ask Ms. Bernard one question, you know. Yes?
I'm closing. You want to say, Miriam?
Thank you. I want to address a number of things that were said. First of all, Evelyn, I don't think you came to Van Oord presentation. Or you were, okay, but I did invite a lot of people, and I even called and emailed to find out if they were coming in order to try and get a response. And Dr. McNeill was one of the first that did RSVP. Mr. Campbell, sorry I forgot about you. Ms. Bernard, you said that I asked about a peer review thing, and you don't see why it's necessary, and that you have given instructions to NEPA not to sign any more contracts because of the contention. Okay, but NEPA had out that tender last year, September. It closed October the 13th, I believe. The press conference that we had about our disagreement with this was April the 30th. That's 6 months. So in 6 months, nobody was assigned. So I don't think that you could have told them in that 6 month period not to sign any contracts because we weren't aware of the project. So there was sand probe testing done just recently because Van Oord was coming. Mr. Issa paid for it. And we had Smith Warner come, and we have the results of that. They did sand probe testing in 14 locations. We have more than adequate sand to do what is required. I don't know where Mr. Campbell got his figures from, but in the Smith Warner report in 2007, to do Long Bay and Bloody Bay, it was between 300,000 to 500,000 cubic meters of sand required. Bloody Bay does not require that amount of, doesn't require any nourishment. So the figures that Mr. Campbell is saying we need to achieve the beach is incorrect. And also, we got quotes to do a geophysical survey to completely map out where all this sand is and to get the exact amounts and the depths and so on. And the quote we got is 100,000, not 450,000.
Yeah, we don't. So somebody, hold on, somebody that has.
Hi, my name is Cindy Zellen. I'm a resident in Negril, and unfortunately I spent a lot of time on the internet talking with other tourists and visitors of Negril. I'm a photographer, so I like to show off my work. Anyway, the talk is the majority of the people do not want to come to Negril if this construction goes on. They're concerned. I mean, I don't know how you're going to get the information out to them because they're not here. They come on vacation, or we have long-term people. But their concerns are they don't want to come during this construction. They don't want to see breakwaters in the water. They want to see the natural beauty of Negril, and they want to see the sand. They want to see the beach fixed, but they don't want to be a part of the problem. So my question is for the next year during construction, where are you going to get the money from the tax revenue that would have been made by the tourists and the visitors? How much are you going to lose there versus how much this project is going to benefit Negril? A mile and a half of the beach doesn't seem quite worth what you're going to lose.
There's a question that just came up that I had on my list, but I think it needs to be answered. You indicated that persons are saying that they don't want to see the breakwater, that it would affect the visuals. Is it something that you're going to be able to see?
Well, it isn't visible from the shore. You'll see the waves breaking like you see on the reef now. But I really don't understand. I don't think you'll be able to discern the breakwater from the coast. Look at the screen. That's a picture.
You see from space. You will see from outer space.
I've heard the question about the aesthetics and what we're going to see when the breakwater has been constructed. Yeah, I'll address that. One of the things that I've heard that you'll be able to see it from shore. You'll be able to block your west end view. So what I did was we tried to get some shots from different points using a boat because based on the building of the breakwater, we expect it to be at mean sea level. But with construction, you might have some boulders above it. And we anticipate that the highest point on those would be about 0.45 meters, which is about a foot and something. So a fisherman boat would give you a good feel for what it would look like. So what we did, we went to the northern breakwater, we stood about central. Now if you look here, we took it with a camera without any zoom, just to imitate what you would see as a human. You look here if you can see a boat in this picture. Okay. Alright, it's right there where the arrow is. Now this is, remember now, the breakwater is 1.5 kilometers offshore. Yeah, I know, but I just give it so that we can all be comfortable here. Now if I zoom in using the PowerPoint at 200, it's still about here. It's right here. And note, it's a white boat, so it contrasts well with the blue, so you should be able to see it properly. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Now if I...
Or you just put the boat here?
No. Now if you zoom in, the boat is still there. 20 times zoom. That's the boat. It's a fisherman boat. It's listen. All right, let me explain. For you to be able to, yes, I know. For you to be able to see it, you're going to have to obstruct your horizon. Yeah? So this is what we're looking at. So that's the boat there. If we zoom it up some more, then, and that is at 200 times on PowerPoint, you'll be able to see like that. So that's I give you an idea of what you will see. during the operation or the existence of the breakwater. To answer your other question about during construction, yes, you'll be able to see the barge trekking along, but what they have to ensure is that the barge is in a good condition, not having things falling off, painted properly.
Nobody wants to look at a barge.
Let me ask you a question. When hotel construction is going on, what happens?
Tourists are saying they're not going to come.
I hear. I mean, you have been to other countries where construction are taking place, and we still do.
Okay. All right, I think that we have, yes, I think I'm going to take you as the last.
Well, it was a very interesting kind of proof. A very interesting kind of try to prove us that we cannot look out 1.5 kilometer and see a boat. Tell me how far the reefs are out there. They are further out, and I see every dive boat and I see the snorkeling boats out there. So what is it now? What kind of camera you use?
Let me explain. If you never understand, the breakwater is an extension of the reef. So it's right in line with the reef. So where we are is where the northern breakwater is. So that's first. Yeah, but I'm saying I use a fisherman boat. You're hold on. Understand this, it's not all the breakwater we're saying is going to be 0.45 meters. We're saying during construction, we know it's a grapple system that they're loading the boulder, and it's not like the boulders are cut smooth. So you're going to find points that are above. So some points, the most it will be is about 0.45 meters. That. Yeah, 1 foot something.
Everybody is on feet.
Right, yeah.
I can see the boys out there. I can see the boys.
Not 1.5 kilometers? Well, even with calculation, because what we did first was we did it with calculation. And with an eagle eye person, you would probably see it at 150 meters.
Who's getting the work to do? Can I ask you?
In the work? In construction? No. Construction? No. I did it, yeah.
Can I ask you a question? They're involved in the
No, all right, please.
Let me just say something here, and I think there's a misconception. I don't think anybody up here says that beach nourishment should not be done. I think the problem is the sequence. You want the beach nourishment done first. We are saying, in our estimation, it doesn't make sense doing the beach nourishment. Could I finish? Doing the beach nourishment first, because we know that there's increased intensity of storm. We know we have erosion, and we have a limited amount of funds to do it. What they have been proposed is to put in the structures so that, one, it helps to protect your shoreline and your properties. 1/5, but guess what? What is the property value you have? Yeah, no, I was trying to explain to the minister that even though it's 1/5, the dollar value of property that's being protected is significant. I know that. Yeah, but there's no funds for everything.
Okay, thank you. All right, please, all right, hold on. I'm going to have the last question, and then what I'm trying to do is sum it up and set a way forward. I think I think quite clearly certain points of view are becoming obvious. They're on both sides. So let us, by all means.
I just wanted to ask you if you've heard of any tourists like interested in coming to see the breakwater, or
One negative question. No. It won't take a minute.
Ms. Bernard, we know you work very hard. And the question is, can the scope of work be changed and reapply for beach nourishment over the prior art? And also, if we the PIOJ gets the blessings from the Negril people to do the breakwater, will the PIOJ be putting some emphasis on doing some beach nourishment in terms of getting some funding? Thank you. And I hear that CARICOM has some money that can do something too.
Okay, I think I said it earlier. The resources of this project cannot be diverted for beach nourishment. The fund board approved a project for the installation of hard engineering structures and also for some agricultural works which are being done, and with respect to Negril for some soft engineering works in terms of the training, the preparation of the storm surge mapping, the climate risk atlas, and all of those kinds of things. So as is, it is absolutely not possible to use the money for sand nourishment. Secondly, if we were to go to apply for a change of scope for the project to support sand nourishment, we would have to demonstrate how that fits in with the list of things that I showed you on the screen earlier, which are the things that the fund supports. Right? And it's water resource management, improving monitoring of diseases, capacity building, etc., agriculture, health, infrastructure development, etc., etc. So it is clear that what seems to be emerging to me is that the community would loathe having this project, and so we... And so we have to take that into consideration and must make the point, however, that when we approached for this project, we did not approach for the project to protect the infrastructure of the tourism sector. And in fact, Dr. Carby and my colleagues will bear me out that when we submitted our proposal, we got several queries, and we had to demonstrate that we were not doing the Negril project for the sake of the tourism industry, that we were doing the Negril project to safeguard the environment and to protect the livelihoods of people. When Professor Mori, who is a member of, was sent here by the Japanese government a couple months ago, because the Japanese contribute very heavily to the Adaptation Fund. When he was talking to us in a room at the Planning Institute, a colleague from NEPA, one of her first response was how many hotels were going to be protected by the works being done. And he immediately stood up, because their contribution is to protect, is towards poverty reduction, etc., etc. And I had to jump in to make the point that in as much as what we were proposing to do would have a positive impact on securing the tourism product, the primary objective of the project was not securing the tourism product. And I had to make the link between safeguarding the tourism product and safeguarding and protecting the livelihoods of the poor. And so I need people to understand that it's not an automatic thing. The critical element is poverty reduction, environmental safeguard, primarily. Yes.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I need to make two very important points. One is that this funding has to do with climate change adaptation, right? Beach nourishment is not an adaptation activity. So it was not going to fit under the rubric of climate change adaptation. The other, in my experience as well, the other thing you have to think about when you're talking about international donors is the whole matter of sustainability. They place very large emphasis on the sustainability of an intervention. And in that regard, your points about maintaining the breakwater are very, very important. But also very important is the question, how are you, if you use beach nourishment, how are you going to keep this sand in place? So, I mean, if the government of Jamaica is spending the money, that's one thing. If the money is coming from the international donor community, it's another set of questions that are asked and that you have to justify why you're putting the project forward and so on and so forth.
And the last point I will make, because most of them have been made, last point I make is something that has been said here. This is a resort area, and I think part of the concern, a major part of the concern, is the fact that having this work done is going to have a fallout. If you did it when you do it, for example, in Palisados, it won't have the fallout that it would have in a resort area. So a lot of the concern that you feel is because as important as what we do is a matter of how we do it. And I think that there's some concern amongst people that if we just go ahead and don't take the safeguards, you're going to end up with a lot of problems. All right, having said that, I'm going to make a suggestion. There are two sets of concerns that have been picked up in general. Some have to do with environmental issues, and others have to do with operational. Some have to do with what impact does this have? And the other set of things is what the impact does the implementation of it have? For example, implementation would have to do with the dumping up of the area, filling of the area. Everybody has a different terminology. Okay. The points that I have here are, one, the dredging of the land, the reclamation of that area that's been filled. There's a concern about it. Some suggestions were made. Is there any other opportunities? What are the other possibilities? And the fact that what is the impact of this and whether it's in there. In other words, I think we need a clarification on that. The impact of the construction on traffic, the dust and the access to the West End, etc. There was real concerns about that. The maintenance of the breakwaters is important. And I don't think we got the idea of what the cost of maintaining it was and how it is in there. There's one here that said the concern that Van Org says the breakwater is bad for small island developing states. Well, I mean, but that's an element of it. I take that. But all right, the other things are the associated environmental, the impact of the dredging, and I would really, I think I would like to see the Water Resources Authority give me a report on that. I think it's an important part of this. There was a discussion about the North and the South River being the loading dock, but whatever it is, I think that was answered. There's a real concern about the extent of the beach that is to be affected. In other words, this has a two-part. First, there's some disagreement about where the beach has been most affected. And what I would like is for us, and part of the problem is we didn't really have it properly documented here. And I would like to see that, whoever it is, however it is, that we can get it up and get some locators on it, some of the properties, so I know exactly where it is. So number one, we can see what you feel are the most affected areas, which is what you're starting with. And secondly, I would like to see when you put in place the breakwater, what is proposed, what is the effect of, is it exactly that area that is supposed to be affected? In other words, I don't know if you're understanding what I'm saying. I want to, you say that there's an area north and central that's most affected. To me, the area that's most affected, I know right where it is in my mind. But I just want to know where your breakwater, what it protects, and what you see as the impact of that going forward. And something that has come up is the seagrass. There were some concerns now about the other side of it, which was the beach nourishment, the actual cost of the beach nourishment. They're too widely disparaging. I mean, you know, it's like you go to buy a house and a man tell you $1 million. And you say Jamaica and I say no, US. No, you're not on the same. And what happened here is that we are, one estimate is 3, 1.5 or 5 or 50. So I would like to just, I think that needs to be clarified. And that goes with the amount of sand. And that must be an empirical thing. And last and most important, for both, I think it might be interesting to just know the cost of maintenance. We got an idea of what it would be, given the idea of how often you'd have to do the beach management, but I'm not certain how you maintain the breakwater. I hear about it, but I don't know. Now, I'm going to make a suggestion. There are a number of things that are happening that I'm not going to stop. I have spoken to some of the technical persons. I know there's a concern about the environmental impact study. I have nothing to do with that and the consultations, and that must do what it is. But I certainly believe that we as a community need to be properly informed as we go along. And so what I'm going to suggest is all of these things that I have just suggested, I'm going to see whether or not we can get the figures. I will say something. I hear what you say about a second opinion, but I do believe that we can find some intermediate in this. I just want to feel that we are certain. We can, huh?
Maybe we should set up a public-private partnership for this.
We can have that discussion. We can have that discussion, but what I will say is that I do believe that, you know, I just want to feel, because I, for one, want to feel that confident that the right thing is being done, whatever it is. I want to, so what I'm going to suggest is these things be done, and hopefully, if possible, I mean, it shouldn't take long to get. It's not a lot of stuff. If we can get these things, I think that we should call another meeting immediately, as soon as information is back. And maybe some of the study, maybe if we need, you know, you never know, water resources, etc. I don't know. But I can indicate to you, and we can run on a parallel track, because I believe we, and certainly I, want to be properly informed going forward. I want to close and just say two things. The first, and I'll just say, look, I'm thankful that GOJ thought it important that we have to protect the beach, and I think it comes out of a lot of advocacy we put in place. And we're happy that you have thought of it, and you've actually determined that there's a process that needs to be done. I will say this to you, Mrs. Bernard, and I've said it to you privately as well. While some consultation went ahead, there was consultation, and I know there was a stakeholders group, and to a certain extent, a number of things have been done. I really do believe it could have been a little bit better in terms of the consultation. And I think that one of the things we must do is, sometimes when we have what is something that is a good gesture, something that starts, I mean, in a meaningful way. So a good intention, but I just want to say that one of the reasons we're here now is because a lot of this information, we needed to clarify it in a different way. early and you know, and while some of it was done, and I'm not throwing, I think it is a broader brush, because maybe it's two sides to every coin. But I just want to say it says to us that the template going forward can be a little more intense. And the last thing that I would say on this is this. You know, we were sitting here today, and I don't know how many of you in this room, but there was one statement made, I think, from the NAA, I think, which really affected me. And it was the point that we have lost X amount of beach, and the reason for it is 70% of that reason is because of climate change and the rising water tides. And it says to me that this is not something that's going to stop immediately, and we're in a serious position. And I just want to say that from my perspective, we're going to have to do something. And an important part of this is, while technical people will bring their things, we have to understand and determine how we're going to move forward, because at the end of the day, we're going to be affected. So I'm just going to say that what I will do now is immediately I'm going to ask my team at the ministry, working with all the agencies, and to see how we can broaden the scope of that for us to at least get the answers to some of these questions in a little more detail, because a number of these things, there's a direct, the opinion is the absolute opposite. So we need to clear it up. And I'm sure that those within the room that have the ability to get other information can do that as well. And let us sit down together and map a way forward, because we all want to work together to protect our little part of Jamaica. So let us try and do it together. And as much as we can work to do it, it will benefit all of us. And quite frankly, where we have concerns, those concerns have to be aired, because at the end of the day, it affects all of us. So I want to thank you all for coming out. This is the last time you're going to hear my voice. I'm going to turn it back over to the Permanent Secretary. But I'm just saying to you that we're going to set a date shortly, as soon as we can get the information back, and we come back again and sit down and let us try and work through, because no matter what, we understand that the one thing we cannot do is nothing.